Good day, folks, and welcome back to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. Let's talk about the man who invented the 80s, Trevor Horn. For those who may not recognize the name, Trevor Horn has garnered something of a name and a reputation, but nearly every musician has their humble beginnings. Trevor not only learned how to play bass guitar from a young age, but also learned how to sight read music, basically being able to interpret and perform music solely based off its notation. So basically, he's a walking, talking equivalent of that Sibelius program I once used to make music on. Or at least, someone who happens to look like me did. Anyway, by 1977, Trevor teamed up with keyboardist Jeff Downes and singer-songwriter Bruce Woolley to form a new group initially known as the Bugs, but eventually renamed the Buggles, clearly influenced by the Beatles, of course. The idea behind this was to make a plastic group, as Jeff and Trevor would put it, a spitting tongue-in-cheek satire of supposedly synthetic pop groups being packaged and sold. So kind of like the Cheetah Girls and Jonas Brothers, essentially, but with even less personality. Or slightly more personality. Take your pick, really. The trio had worked on a few demos for several songs, some of which would make it into the 1979 album English Garden by Bruce's other band, The Camera Club, and eventually on the album we'll be looking at today. After Bruce had left to form The Camera Club, the rest of the Buggles, Trevor and Jeff, carried on with their own project, although it's probably likely that some of Bruce's guitars could still be heard somewhere in the final cut. Though I could be wrong there and could be inaccurate and just reading off an inaccurate source. But in any event, the album in question would find its release at the dawn of not only a new year, but also a new decade. But does this album still live and hold up after 45 years? Well, let's find out for ourselves as we jump into the Buggles' 1980 debut album, The Age of Plastic. The cover is pretty simple, somewhat unique, and even fitting. The font of the band name's logo definitely give it that kind of digital technologic vibe. And the way the art is stylized looks like it was rendered through a computer of sorts. Old by nowadays standards, but likely modern for that time. Trevor and Jeff each appear on either side of the record packaging, both with this kind of weird, wiring plugged into their necks. Again, driving home that theme of artificiality, although I can imagine it would probably be uncomfortable to actually have something like that attached to you. Another thing is that there's technically no back cover, so either could be the front cover, with the top of both having the listing of the songs in each side A and side B. So I guess it's kind of like how you'd flip the vinyl disc itself to get to the other side. You could also flip the packaging itself, which to prefer whichever side you want to go for. But anyways, on to the music itself. We begin the album with Living in the Plastic Age. Immediately, this definitely sets the mood, tone, and overall thematic elements. Starting off with several dial-up sounds playing abruptly at odd intervals and this echoing yell. It all lasts for only half a minute before the synthy bass, piano, and drums all come in and the music actually starts proper. We get a pretty good beat and a hook, definitely giving off that 70s, 80s retro futuristic vibe, similar to what we'd get in ELO's Time a year and a half year later, with a little bit of ABBA in there as well. Then we get Trevor himself singing the verses in that sort of neurotic tone. every day my plastic friend shakes my bed at 6 a.m. That vibrator's not doing me any good, I'll tell you. And the shiny serving clones run in with my telephones. One is my boss telling me that I'm going to be late for my work again, another is my wife ordering me to get the groceries and pick up our son. Talking fast, I make a deal, buy the fake and sell what's real. What's this pain on my chest? Maybe I should take a rest. Dude, I don't think a rest is going to help prevent a chestbuster from killing you. In the chorus, Trevor sings about the heart police, putting you under a cardiac arrest, as opposed to a karma police arresting this man for talking in mass and buzzing like a fridge. They drag you through the door and tell you that you failed the test, boy. Exams must have really been strict and harsh in this future. And speaking of, the plastic age itself, or at least the name itself, seems to be on par with past historical ages and eras, like the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and so on, with each being named after the sort of materials we had discovered and used to create the tools and other things suited to our ever-growing needs. And here today, with modern technology continuing to grow greater and faster, all thanks to us no less, we reach the plastic age, a possible future in which nearly everything we see or use are likely literally made of plastic, which is kind of true today when you think about it. We abuse and take advantage of nature, exploiting the natural and yet creating the unnatural. And now we got plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic surgeries, plastic beaches, and all that. Before long, we'd inevitably reach a point in which we'd no longer be able to tell what's fake or real, a genuine article or a hollow imitation. And again, considering the state of AI these days, that's also likely true as well. This song here, along with yours truly 2095 by ELO, seem to perfectly embody that sort of world and that sort of feeling. Next is the most well-known song the Buggles have made and possibly their one-hit wonder, Video Killed the Radio Star. Even if you never heard of the Buggles before or even know the title of the track, there is possibly no doubt that you might have heard this song at least once at some point. If any song would have defined what the music of the 80s would generally be like, it would be this one. This hit single reached number 1 in Austria, Australia, France, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, and the UK. And when a song reaches number 1 in that amount of countries, you know you not only got a good song, but a great song of that. After a sweet and distinct piano intro that's immediately recognizable from the very few notes, we get into the first verse sooner than expected. I heard you on the wireless back in 52, lying awake, intent on tuning in on you. If I was young, it didn't stop you coming through. But if I was old enough, they'd probably still stop you from buying an alcoholic drink for me. They took the credit for your second symphony, rewritten by machine and new technology. And now I understand the problems you can see. Insert AI joke here because I've already just done one earlier. I met your children. What did you tell them? Now let me tell you about my grandchildren. But we're technically your children. In fact, we don't even have children of our own yet. And that's why I'm going to tell you what kind of grandchildren I want you to make for me, so shut up and listen. The chorus itself is instantly catchy, simple, and iconic, with the backing vocalists, Debbie Doss and Linda Jardim Allen, taking the spotlight to sing the title of the song, Video Killed the Radio Star. Maybe so, but who killed the video star? Robbie Williams would say it was reality that killed the video star, the album of which Trevor Horn also did produce. However, American electropop group The Limousines would say that it was the internet that killed the video star. Or that Has Been Hotel episode, radio killed the video star. Any of them wouldn't exactly be out of possibility, though. In the second verse, Trevor goes on to say that he met the radio star himself. And now we meet in an abandoned studio. We hear the playback, and it seems so long ago. And you remember the jingles used to go. Yeah, I remember many of the jingles in my day. WeBuyAnyCar.com, TrustATrader.com, Glaston Brooks, terms and conditions apply. In my mind and in my car, we can't rewind, we've gone too far. The button on the cassette player has stopped working. Pictures came and broke your heart. Put the blame on VTR. Of course, Batman was right. VHS is the root of all evil. You shall be avenged, Betamax, all the way. The song has an extended ending that's often cut out of its radio edit, but is intact in the album version. And quite shamefully at that, since this is a beautiful ending, often titled Polythene Symphonia, we get the return of that natural-sounding piano along with what sounds like strings and woodwinds, definitely giving it that symphonic feel, but also bittersweet in a way, on par with the piano exit of Layla by Derek and the Dominoes. Another thing to bring up in regards to the song is its equally iconic music video, being the first ever video to air on the MTV channel all the way back in its very first day, the 1st of August 1981, and it features a cameo by a young Hans Zimmer. Yes, that Hans Zimmer, the composer behind The Lion King, The Prince of Egypt, Gladiator, Inception, Interstellar, the Dark Knight trilogy, the Pirates of the Caribbean series, and the Dune films, just to name a few famous ones off the top of my head. In fact, he was even part of an Italian new wave band back in the early 80s called Chrisma. Between trivia like that and James Newton Howard being involved in many Elton John songs, some iconic film composers we know today do seem to be associated with great 80s music in the most odd ways. Following up on this is the shortest track of the album, Kid Dynamo, a somewhat dramatic and fast-paced little gem that sounds like a mix between Kraftwerk, Devo, and the Alan Parsons Project. Through its rather minimalistic lyrics, the song generally centers on a boy named Kid Dynamo, which sounds more like a superhero sidekick name, and the effects he goes through from the potential exposure to the futuristic media of the 80s. Through today, you might be riding the engines of progress, but tomorrow you'll be riding the engines of converticism. Working in the media factory, call me if you ever feel like letting go. Pretty much describes when companies only decide now to lay off a lot of those DEI employees. Topical. The song delves into the idea of creating and basing one's own identity off of the media and fiction we're exposed to. Case in point, a few interestingly particular lines later in the track, in between the repeated singing of the song's title. I remember you, the hours I spent with you, because I invented you. Now, could this be the boy singing about and to his alter ego / persona that he invented? Or could it be a personification of media singing about this boy and how it invented him, inspiring him to become what he is now? Little things like that can have a lot of interpretations. Besides that though, this is such an underrated song that manages to be both energetic and atmospheric, like Logan's Run or Blade Runner in musical form. Side 1 ends with I Love You, Miss Robot. Another underrated gem from the Buggles, this is a groovy and moody track similar to something out of Dire Straits with a little bit of proto-Daft Punk. The funkish bass and synthetic percussion are merely the backbone of the song. What really makes it memorable for me are the electronically advanced vocals singing I Love You, Miss Robot electronically. I Love You, Miss Robot, programmed just to please. A love song between two machines, or a love song between a human who feels like a machine and an actual machine? You make the call. Actually, though, according to a Smash Hits magazine interview with Jeff Downs, he describes the song in particular as being about, and I quote, being on the road and making love to someone you don't really like while all the time you're wanting to phone someone who's a long way off. Unquote. And honestly, I can kind of get that sort of idea. Especially when the normal vocals sing the verses of you make love like a metronome, don't drive too fast when you take me home. No, seriously, the speed limit where I live is very restrictive. And how does one make love like a metronome anyway? Do they bob back and forth in a consistent rhythm? Touch the seam on your silver skin. I feel so hard when you take me in. Good night, everybody. Trevor goes to sing on about having to communicate with a lover on the telephone, very much like what Jeff stated. Talk of love on the telephone. When your love fades, there's a paying tone. Or it could just be a sign of my data being used up. Force a coin and you're there again. DI the loneliness brain to brain. It doesn't help much that the prices keep getting increased thanks to the recession we're in. The backing harmonic vocals spread out throughout the song are also especially a highlight for me, giving it this semi-holy feeling and an almost Gregorian vibe. It all goes to show that whether it's the love we're trying to make with other people that we don't even really love that feels robotic, or it's the people themselves that feel robotic. So, kind of like with those AI girlfriends I've heard about lately.